Today we have a very important conference about the Palestinian prisoners. The Ufree arranged that with our friends, Irish friends. You know that the Irish start the very important and historic hunger strike in 1981, and today in 2012 we have the Palestinian historic strike also. This is the compare between this experience, the Irish experience and the Palestinian experience. It's very, very important for us. This is the main idea about this conference.
Today's event here in St Mary's College in Belfast is a unique event, very, very important to us as Irish Republicans. It's in support of the Palestinian struggle. There has been a hunger strike which terminated there, and to the best of our knowledge there's still one or two prisoners on hunger strike, but there were somewhere in the region of 1,500 to 2,000 prisoners on hunger strike. And it concluded with an Egyptian brokered deal with the Israelis on Tuesday past. The significance being that it was actually the anniversary of Nakba, which is from 1948, when the Israelis took over Palestine and expelled the Palestinians from their homes. This is important today. There will be a live link with former prisoners in Gaza today, and we actually have a MLA, Pat Sheehan, who's a former hunger striker himself. Donny Morrison's on the panel as well, who was the Sinn Fein publicity director during the hunger strike here. Mary Nellis is here, who was one of the key people in the relative sections committees during the course of the blanket protest. We also have former Palestinian prisoner and Palestinian chair of Ufree on our panel here for discussion. There will be a televised debate, question and answers here today. It's crucial, and we would like to say this to as many people as possible, for continued support for the Palestinian struggle, because even though in terms of the Israelis agreeing to some form of an arrangement or some form of resolution to the hunger strike, the pressure needs to be kept, not only for them to honour the commitment over whatever measures they want to introduce in terms of dealing with administrative detention, which is akin to the internment without trial that we've had here, but also in terms of support for the wider Palestinian struggle of a people who are, generally speaking, in Gaza, which is probably one of the most densely populated areas on earth. It's like living in a large concentration camp, and international pressure needs to continue on the Israelis to try and do the honourable thing and grant the Palestinians the freedom that they deserve, the freedom that is legitimately theirs. And we need to support the Palestinian people in their struggle.
Dear brothers and sisters, friends and comrades in Ireland, in Belfast, I am very pleased to welcome you all and to be with you in this very important conference, Dying to Live, that highlights the plight of the Palestinian prisoners and raises awareness about their suffering. In the name of Wide Association for Palestinian Prisoners, and on behalf of all Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, Jerusalem, and even in the diaspora, and on behalf of the Palestinian government in Gaza, I thank you very much for having this conference. I know that your time is very limited, so I'm going to leave the stage for my brother, the freed Palestinian prisoner, Mr. Ahmed Taha, who spent 10 years in jail and who was sentenced for life. He was recently freed in the prisoners' exchange with the Zionist entity.
Assalamu alaikum. Salam all our Irish friends and comrades. It gives me so much pleasure to be here with you in this conference. My name is Ahmed Taha. I was imprisoned in the Zionist jails for more than 10 years. I was sentenced for life. During my days in prison, I experienced all kinds of torture, humiliation, and sufferings. On behalf of the Palestinian prisoners, we want to thank our brothers and sisters in Ireland for their long-standing support in the struggle for our freedom and our country. I am aware that today in Belfast, the conference is being attended by many former prisoners and hunger strikers who showed great courage and strength in defying their captors and maintaining the legitimacy of their resistance. Ireland and Palestine have a shared history of occupation and oppression. We have both had our land taken and our rights removed. Your great Irish martyr, Bobby Sands, died on May the 5th, 1981. Now, 31 years in the year 2012. And once again, political prisoners must resort to starving themselves just to get basic simple human rights. We pledge to our brothers and sisters gathered in Ireland that we will not yield in our struggle. Bobby Sands died when he was 27 years old, and when he died, he had spent a third of his young life in jail. Here in Palestine, we have hundreds of young people behind bars, and they are suffering torture and grave human rights abuses. They need you to reach into their jail cells and break the silence. Extend the hand of solidarity. They need you to be their voices. Tell their stories to the world by holding events like this one. Only when the world knows, understands, and cares can we ever hope for change. Our prisoners have not been allowed family visits, and they are being kept for years in solitary confinement. In Palestine, we have an entire generation of young children who may never meet or see their own fathers. All of these abuses are against the Geneva Convention and the human rights of political prisoners. We were greatly encouraged throughout this time when we learned of the support and solidarity we were receiving from Ireland. You have been through this and thankfully are building your peaceful future. We look forward to the day when we can begin to rebuild our beautiful Palestine in peace. As Irish people, you have a true understanding of what we are going through. You have been through it, and you have come out on the other side in victory. On our discussion panel today, you have Mr. Pat Sheehan, a man who spent years in jail, and he also took part in the Irish hunger strike, and yet today he's an elected parliamentarian. This is Ireland's victory. This is Ireland's future. In Palestine, all of this gives us great hope that someday the hundreds of Palestinians who are today in Israeli jails, starving for their rights, will one day in our future become political leaders of a free Palestine, inshallah. I will end with some words from Bobby Sands, but I will change them to be for Palestine. They won't break us because the desire for freedom and the freedom of the Palestinian people is in our hearts. The day will dawn when all the people of Palestine will have the desire for freedom to show. It's then that we will see the rising of the moon. I call on you to please continue support for all the Palestinian prisoners. And remember, everyone has a part to play. No part is too great or too small. No one is too old or too young to do something. Shukri Allah.
Well, I was there today to speak on behalf of the Relatives Action Committee, which came together to support the prisoners during the Hezbollah campaign. But I was there because I have been active in supporting the Palestinian Prisoners Association and the rights of the Palestinian people, and because the more I hear about what's going on in Palestine, the more horrified I am that, in the year 2012, that we have a government there that can murder people, murder children, board ships, shoot people dead, intern people, brutalise people, tumble people's homes, put people out, destroy their livelihood. This is in a civilised world, this shouldn't be happening. That's why I'm here. It shouldn't be happening.
Well, first of all, the day was about the Palestinians and about Palestinian prisoners, particularly those prisoners who were on hunger strike. And it was very moving for me in particular, who was involved in the 1981 hunger strike with Bobby Sands, to hear a former Palestinian prisoner on the link up with Gaza, quoting Bobby and quoting from Bobby's writings. And it's moving, it's very moving for me and for Irish Republicans in general to realise that 31 years on after the hunger strike, people like Bobby Sands are still motivating other people who are fighting for their freedom throughout the world. I think what's important today, and I mentioned it during my own contribution, is that if there's any people anywhere in the world who can empathise and understand what the Palestinians are going through in Israeli prisons and on hunger strike, it's the Irish people and it's Irish Republicans, because we've been there and done that. We understand what's involved, we understand the suffering because we've been through it, and we also understand that sense of injustice that exists and that spirit of freedom that the Palestinian people have, that will inevitably see them someday have their own independent state in Palestine. What today does is that it educates people. It's about breaking the silence that we talked about during the conference today. Mary Nellis very eloquently explained how the Relatives Action Committee broke the silence in terms of what was happening in the H blocks in the 1970s. And conferences like the one we had today do the same thing. They break through the silence and they motivate people to action, to become active in support of the Palestinians. It also gives a sense to Palestinians that they're breaking out of the isolation that the Israelis are trying to impose upon them and on their struggle, and that they know and gain inspiration from the fact that people thousands of miles away understand what they're going through, support them in what they're doing, and are prepared to continue to work, not only to resolve issues in regard to prison conditions, but to help and bring about freedom in Palestine.
My feeling that I'm between my relatives. My message to Bobby Sands and his friends, that we will keep your struggle. All the Palestinian and the Palestinian prisoners, they will remember you all the time, and remember the struggle for your people during the history. I want to thank him and to thank his friends who learn us how we can fight even if we haven't any weapons.